Just a few things about myself. Um, Aside from my tutoring position at Miami-Dade College, Wilson campus, I'm also a freelance graphic designer, and I'm an alumnus of Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton. I got my Bachelor's of Business Administration in the spring of 2017 with a concentration in information systems, and I also got my Master of Education during the fall of 2018. Was born in North Miami Beach and raised in Pembroke Pines, where I currently live now, so South Florida resident, born and raised, and of course, like I stated, currently a part-time writing tutor for the MDC Wilson Campus Learning Resources. I'll start off covering Adobe Photoshop first. So, in the event that you find yourself having already downloaded Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator, as you can see, I'm hovering over the two icons in my dashboard now. The Photoshop icon will look something like this, with this blue PS icon, and the Adobe Illustrator icon will look like this gold slash orangish AI icon over here. So that is what will appear in your dashboard in the event that you have downloaded them. And then once you have clicked on Photoshop and it officially launches, this is the dashboard. This is the what the dashboard will look like, and what you want to first do, and it really depends on what type of project that you're looking to create. But for now, I'm going to create just the standard Instagram square dimensions. So what you would do if you wanted to set your canvas size is go over here to create new in the event that you want to reopen an already existing project that you want to revisit, like these projects that you see here. You would just go ahead and either click on them directly here or go to open and go to a direct file that may not be listed in here. So for now, I'm going to click on create new. And I have a variety of different already preset sizes in here because these are the sizes that I normally create my projects in. So instead of having to go over here to the right side and typing it in manually all the time, I already have them set up for me right here. So like I said, the Instagram dimensions are square, and in this case, that is 10 by 10 inches. And you want to make sure that along with the size being 10 by 10 inches, no matter what your project size is, whether it's 5 by 7, 10 by 10, or 6 by 8, you want to make sure that you set your resolution to 300 pixels per inch. And that's important because uh, you want to keep in mind that you might come to the point where you want to print out. You might want to print out whatever material that you create in here, and you want the resolution to be as high quality as possible. And the recommended quality pixels per inch is always supposed to be set to 300. So now that I have my 10 by 10 inches set here, I have my 300 in resolution. I'm going to go over here to this button that says create, and my canvas has officially been created. I have the square Instagram dimensions that everybody is accustomed to seeing. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. And first and foremost, I'm going to cover just the basic tools that a beginner would find themselves using, and I'm going to cover what I usually use in my projects. And the thing about the Adobe software, there are different types of graphic designers. So in my case, I work a lot when it comes to flyers and branding and logos and marketing materials. So there's a certain set of tools that I use consistently, and someone else that's a little bit more of an illustrator or maybe a cartoonist. There's people that work on children's books that have to work a lot with caricatures and such. They'll find themselves using some tools that I probably have never touched, but I'm going to discuss the very basic things that you'll find yourself using along with what I find myself using. So, so I'm going to start at the top. As you can see in this toolbar, there's plenty of them here. The very first one is called the Move tool, and it's really simple. The purpose of this is to make sure that whatever object is currently on your screen, the Move tool allows you to just click and drag it to wherever you want it to be. So I'm going to just do a quick example. And I'll be teaching you about two different tools simultaneously by doing this. So that's the move tool, but I'm going to go here to the ellipse tool, which is also the shape tool. And if you, by default, you'll see that it's set to a circle, but if you want to go to perhaps a different shape, you just have to click and hold, and you'll see the various options that you have. You have the rectangle, the already existing circle, the triangle, and the polygon, and the line tool. But if you would like another shape, then you would bring up the custom shape tool. And then I'm going to go over here to the rectangle tool, and in order to put a rectangle on your canvas, you will go up to here where you see fill, give it a color. In this case, I'll just make it pink. And you can give it a stroke. And in Photoshop terms, a stroke pretty much means just the outline color. I'll keep that to green. And then I'm going to click and drag. So now I have my pink rectangle with the green stroke and or outline, if whatever you would like to call it. And going back to the move tool up here that I spoke of, all I have to do is click on the canvas and I'm able to drag the rectangle wherever I want it to be. And the move tool also allows you to size the rectangle however you would want. In order to change the size of it, right now I have it pretty large. You would you would go up to here where it says show transform controls, click that box, and then you'll start to see the little indicators that you can now change the size of the rectangle. And you would just go to whichever one you please and click and drag, change the size. You can make it a little bit wider and more narrow, however you want to make it. So that's the basics of the shape tool and the move tool. So I'm going to, and so you can also have an understanding of where you are on your project and what layer you're on. This is the layers panel over here. To the right side, this one that says layer 0, that is just your basic white canvas that you start off with when you launch a new project. And then from there, every single layer that you throw on from there, that this layers panel will grow. So right now we're at 2 because we have our basic canvas and then the rectangle on top of it. If you would like to hide a particular layer, all you have to do is go to this eyeball next to each layer and just click on it. And then from there, it's, even though the layer is technically still in existence, it just can't be seen right now because you clicked on that eye tool. And this just gives you the option of just seeing where you are on your project, seeing if you want to move one layer below another, and just seeing how everything comes together. So that is why the eyes are there and necessary, just so you can hide a layer but not necessarily have to delete it. So I'll bring that back. And then moving on to, there is also the magic wand tool. And what this allows you to do, it allows you to select, it allows you to select anywhere on the canvas, anywhere on the canvas that is pretty much the same color. So in this case, now that I have my magic wand tool, I'm just going to click inside this rectangle. And as you can see, the indicators are telling me that I've clicked everything. It's going to highlight everything that is pink. Now I'm going to go up to here to select and deselect just to start over. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit just to see a little bit of what I'm doing. And now I'm going to try to click on the green. So now my magic wand has now selected the outer portion of the rectangle and not the pink. So I've selected everything that is green. So if you would like to edit a portion of any project but not the entire thing, then that's what the magic wand tool is for. So say if I wanted to change this green to another color now that I have only that selected. Um, Now I'm going to teach you about then there's the paint bucket tool. And the icon looks just like a paint bucket, so it's not hard to miss. So if I wanted to change the color of just this green and this green alone, leaving the white background as is, leaving the pink as is, I would go down here to my color palette at the bottom with these two double panels, click on whichever one you want, And let's say if I wanted to change that to, let's say if I wanted to change that to blue now. So now I would just hover my cursor over the green, and now you have a blue, now you have a blue outline. So that is how the magic wand tool works. You're not selecting everything, you're just selecting a portion of what you would like to edit, and then from there you make your necessary changes using whichever tool you please, using whatever colors you want, but everything else remains the same, and that's the purpose of the wand tool, and that is also how the paint bucket tool works. Naturally, and I'll hide this square layer real quick, and that's naturally how the paint bucket tool works. You just have to select whatever color you want, and if you just click on the canvas, then it'll make everything that one color. So I just clicked on my background, and now my background is all blue. And the paint bucket, by default, unless you don't set it in a different manner, will make everything the same color unless you do what I did before and get your wand tool and select the things that you want to be isolated in a way. And then you've got going to bring back the rectangle, and then you've got your eraser tool. And this is really pretty straightforward. Right now, this is the size. My eraser tool is pretty small, but if you would like to erase something quicker and faster and make the eraser bigger, all you have to do is go up to here in the top left. And right now I have it set to a size of 252 pixels, but if I would like for it to be larger, I would probably maybe go all the way to 500. So now I have a bigger eraser, and all I would have to do, if you would like to erase anything, you just have to click and drag as such. Now, here is another trick. I want to bring, because I'm just showing you an example, I want to bring back my rectangle. And in most cases, I know we're all aware of going to probably in any whatever software you're using. I know that this is the case in Microsoft Word. We would probably go up here to edit and then go to undo. In this case, undo eraser. But I'm going to give you there's a nice shortcut if you ever would like to undo something really quick and not have to always hover up here and to click on undo. So I'm going to erase it again. And if I would like to bring it back, the shortcut on your keyboard for undoing, if you have a Mac, it's Command Z, and if you have a PC, that would be Control Z. So I have a Mac, so I'm just going to click on Command Z to bring back the rectangle as the shortcut for undoing, and it just came back. So this not only applies, and this is a standard keyboard shortcut, so this not only applies in Photoshop, whatever software you're using, if you're online and you backspace on something but you would like to bring it back, always remember to have Control and or Command Z. And then there's your paintbrush tool, and this pretty much will work the exact same way as your eraser does, only you're adding and not subtracting. So I'm going to select a color from the color panel down here, and say if I wanted to now add green, and if I wanted to change the size of it, the same way I change the size of my eraser tool, I will go up here, change the size to 500, and I would just click and drag on my canvas. And now I'm just going to undo using that same shortcut. That was just a quick example. And then the last basic tool that I'm going to show, also very straightforward, is the text tool. And the text tool will be indicated by the letter T here, as you see in the toolbar. And in order to start writing text, all you have to do is click anywhere on the canvas, and now you have your text there. Right now it's pretty small, but the same way in Microsoft Word, how you would make your text larger, just go over here to the character panel, and I'm going to give it a font size of 36 just to better see what I'm doing. And I have my default text here that appeared, but I'm just going to, the same way you would in any software, then text tool is very straightforward. You just write out your text however you please, and from there, that's where your project, if you know the basics. Now that I give you the basic tools, you're able to start a very standard project in Adobe Photoshop. So those are the basic tools. So now I'm going to actually open up a project that I did last week just to give you a little bit more hands-on, give you a more hands-on look at what it takes to create a flyer or any other project in Photoshop. So I'm going to close this project and open up an actual real project that I did last week. So this is a save the date invitation that I did for a couple that has their wedding coming up in October of 2022. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hide each of my layers and just pretty much go all the way from the very beginning, just to show you how I arrived at this design and just show you how the design process works in general. So for And everything for me starts with a discovery call and just getting an idea of what their vision is and what they're looking for out of the project. So I just asked them what the theme was of their wedding and what color scheme that they had in mind. They said that they definitely wanted shades of brown and a touch of gold, and they wanted it to look very classy, an almost dressed to impress type of appearance. So So with them telling me that they were looking for something that still captured love, they were looking for something that still captured love, but they wanted something that really spoke to really spoke to who they were, and it looked very upscale. So that immediately told me that I had to go and find a very modern, elegant looking background in a way. So before I even think to add any text or any elements, I have to make sure that my background I have to make sure that my background is very fitting. So as you can see, this is the background that I went with. Very upscale looking, has a great pattern, and it'll immediately catch your attention. So what I do, I have a certain process when it comes to finding the backgrounds that I want. So one thing I always do is I go to Google Images first and foremost. And now that I knew what type of background that they wanted, I knew what type of background that they wanted, I would type something in along the lines of elegant brown wallpaper. As you can see, it's already in my history because I've done that already. I would type in something along the lines of elegant brown wallpaper, and you'll get plenty of results. Um, Now, that doesn't mean that you can use just any of these because, as you can see, come up in a much more, some of them come up in a much more high quality than others. Like this one, very high definition, as opposed to maybe something that's like more of a stock photo and probably can be used. And how do you differentiate between what's a high quality, high resolution background as opposed to another? So I'm going to go back to this one. I have a personal rule that you don't make sure that you don't use anything that's below 1,000 pixels. And how do you find that out? Just find it and open it up in this panel, and then some people probably wouldn't notice this, but if you see here in the bottom left corner, this tells you the pixel dimensions of the wallpaper that you're hoping to use. In this case, you have 1920 by 1200 pixels. So that means this one is good and is very high quality. Now, say if you were hovering over this one, hey, this is a great design, don't get me wrong, but if you hover over in the bottom left, this is only 388 pixels by 387. So that means that if I were to bring this over to my canvas and try to stretch it out across the entire width and height of my canvas size, it would probably start to get a little blurry, and it would take away from the quality of the project. Now, whatever you're working on, you want to make sure that your images that you select are very crisp and clean and high resolution and very eye-catching. You don't want to take away from the quality of the project. You don't want anything to be blurry. It'll make you look like you don't know what you're doing, and you want to come off as a quality designer, regardless of who you're working for. So going back to the project, so this is my wallpaper, And from here, and and from here, I would say that once you have your wallpaper, once you find a fitting wallpaper that speaks to what they were asking for, then from there it's just a matter of you having an understanding of, hey, this is a wedding, so you want to make sure it's very elegant. Very elegant, doesn't do too much, but still looks like very inviting and something that you would want to show up to. So in this case, I know with the traditional wedding invitation, you'll probably find the text will probably be surrounded by flowers or things of that nature. But because their theme is a little different, they didn't want me to do that. They wanted something that was a little bit on more on the royal side. So instead of going with the flowers route, I wanted to go with a gold frame to surround my text. So now I'm going to open this layer that I chose, and this is the gold frame that I went with. And how do you find gold frames? The same way I find my wallpapers. Type in gold frame, and as you can see, I typed in gold frame, but I also, to be more specific in my search, I typed in gold frame PNG HD, and HD of course stands for high definition. PNG is the type of file that you're looking for. PNG means that you're looking for a file that has no white background behind it. It has to be transparent. So this frame right here, this checker background immediately tells you that this is a transparent wallpaper, as opposed to something like this that has a white background and you're not able to use it. You want to find something that you can immediately drag into your canvas without you having to remove the white background yourself. It just saves time and effort. So and you can, and Google, of course, will come up with plenty of results. And until you find the one that you want that is transparent, then that's when you go ahead and select it. And the pixel size also matters with these as well. So this is transparent, but however, it is 840 by 859 pixels down here. So even though that's close to the size that you're pursuing, it's just not quite there. So I wouldn't personally use this. It just really depends on the project. It might work in some cases, but I would probably continue looking. So no matter what you're looking for, like I said, if you're on Google Images, always make sure that you find something that's above 1000 pixels, whether it's a background or a frame or an image of any kind. You always want everything to be very crisp and high definition. So going back to the project, once I found me a frame that was very fitting for the project itself, along with being a high definition image, I put that on top of my wallpaper. So now, and to be honest, at this point, you're almost done. All you have to do is just add the text that your client gives you. So in this case, I'm just going to bring back all of my text layers. So now I have so now I have all my text layers, and the type of fonts that you choose. I forgot to touch on this. The type of fonts that you choose really are dependent on what they have in mind. Of course, in their case, they were going for a very upscale, lavish, elegant type of feeling and atmosphere with their wedding and with their invitations. So that immediately tells you, hey, my fonts have to be a little bit more romantic looking, a little bit more elegant, and very soft. So that's why I went with the cursive look for save the date, and and their last name is Estelle. So I went with cursive for save the date and for their last name, and for everything else, I went with a very standard, very skinny and sleek font. Not doing too much, not too strong, very soft. So in this case, most people would probably say, "Hey, you look like you're done." And if I sent this over to them, I would probably they would probably say, "Hey, you did a great job. We'll definitely go with it." But I'm a perfectionist in a way, The only issue, before I consider it final, the only issue that I find with this is that uh, going back to my wallpaper, I have a very detailed. My wallpaper is very detailed, and it has a very distinct pattern. And as a wallpaper, it's great. But now that you see my text on top of that pattern, that wallpaper pattern looks a little distracting. This is where the contrast of your elements and the balance of everything that you threw onto your canvas, this is where that comes into play, and this is where your creative eye takes control. So the only issue I have with this is that you want, yes, the wallpaper is nice, and yes, the gold frame is nice, but at the end of the day, the most important information on here is the text. You want whoever they're sending this to, whoever they're mailing this out to, you want that to be front and center, the first thing people see, and everything else follows after that. This is supposed to be the first thing they see, and then the gold frame and the wallpaper are supposed to be second. Right now, as it stands, the first thing I see and the first thing I think anyone would see is more so the wallpaper and not the text itself. So the text placed on top of this wallpaper is just a lot going on. Like they might see the word save, but then they might direct their attention back to the pattern. It's just a lot going on. So in order to make sure that you still capture the wallpaper, but make sure that the text pops out more, that's when you want to that's when apply somewhat of a you would want to apply somewhat of a uh, faint background behind all of this. So what I would do, I would get a rectangle. So going back to my rectangle tool here in the toolbar that I showed before, I would get this, I would choose my color. I'm gonna go with maybe a darkish brown. I'm going to go right behind my text. And then this is another thing. You wanna make sure that you're placing the rectangle in the right location. So you wanna make sure the rectangle is, of course, on top of the wallpaper, but behind your text. And then that's where your layers panel and knowing your layers panel comes into play. So I'm going to place the rectangle. I'm going to choose this wallpaper layer. So that's letting me know like, hey, I'm gonna place this rectangle on top of that, but behind the text. So I'm going to go over here to the very top corner of the gold frame just to know what area and what ground I'm covering. And from there, I'm going to click. I'm going to click and drag, and making sure that I'm covering every portion. And then from there, now the text really, that one change that I made such a difference. So now the text immediately pops out. And the last thing is, remember that I touched on the fact that I wanted, because I still have a great wallpaper, I want to make sure that that still is somewhat seen behind this rectangle, but not too much. You still don't want it to be too distracting, but you still want to have some faint image of you still have some faint image that is there. So what I would do to finalize the project in full, all I would do is go back to my layers panel, and as you can see up top, there's this setting here in the top right of your layers panel called opacity, and that just lets you know how that allows you to adjust how faint or how solid your color is of a particular layer. So in this case, I want my rectangle to have somewhat of a see-through effect just to capture the wallpaper just enough, but still have the text pop out enough to my liking so that you can capture everything that needs captured. So I'm just gonna click on the arrow under opacity, and then I'm just going to drag it until it gets to a setting that I see fit. So you can drag it all the way to here, and that's probably a little bit too much because now the wallpaper this is when the wallpaper starts to be a little bit too distracting again. So I'm gonna drag it to the point of probably 80%. So now, so now that I did that, you still see you still see the wallpaper pattern just a little bit, but you still were able to make sure that your text pops out more. And now the project is done. You have the wallpaper, you have the see-through effect, the text pops out, and the gold frame surrounds your text and encloses it the way you want. And now the project is done. And when I did show this to them, they loved it. So I would say it's very important to know. It's just as important to know the fundamentals of designing, because some people would probably be satisfied with the fact that they found the wallpaper that they needed, or some people would be satisfied with the fact that they found the gold frame that they needed, and putting the text inside, and they would probably be okay with that because they're just trying to create something that just looks really nice. But then that's when the fundamentals come into play, and you have to be able to realize, like, hey, does my text pop out as much as it should? Is my text legible? Is everything is everything working? You want all of your elements to work together, in a very flawless fashion. So it's very important to we all want to create something nice, but you want to make sure that you have your fundamentals down pat before you consider a project complete. So that does it for Photoshop. So before I move on to Illustrator, are there any questions?
I I don't see anything in the chat, but feel free, everyone, to turn on your mics and ask a question. I think Solomon might.
And Patrick, let me know if I
Yeah,
should move forward.
yeah. Go ahead, Hudson. I don't see anything in the chat box. So
Alrighty. Okay, and then now we're going to move on to Adobe Illustrator, and the same way, the canvas or the dashboard for Adobe Illustrator looks the exact same way. When you click to open the software, it looks the exact same way that Photoshop does, with your recent projects here in the middle, and the option to create a new canvas or open an existing project over here. So I use Illustrator primarily for logo designing, and that's because the difference between Illustrator and Photoshop is that Photoshop is for projects in which you're creating something with set dimensions. So what I mean by that is, if I wanted to create a book cover for somebody, they're probably going to ask for it specifically in 6 by 8, 5 by 7, 4 by 5, whatever the case may be. Or someone might ask me to make a flyer that's 10 by 10 inches, or someone might ask me to create an invitation that's 5 by 7 inches. So Photoshop is for things that have set dimensions, and from there it's up to you to create something great within those dimensions. And that's called a raster-based program. The term for that is raster. Anything in which you have set dimensions, and if you try to stretch it out beyond those dimensions, then that's when things will start to get blurry. And Illustrator is a vector-based software. The term for Illustrator is called vector, and vector for vector software, those are reserved for projects such as logos, in which you want whatever you create in Illustrator to stretch out to any size. So I can use the Miami-Dade College logo as an example. You want the Miami-Dade College logo to be able to stretch down small enough to the point you can use it on a PowerPoint or on a business card, but you also want it to stretch out large enough without getting blurry to the point you can use it on a building or on a sign or on a billboard or anything of that nature. So logos are things that you want to be able to stretch out to any size without losing quality, or just without losing its resolution. And that's where Illustrator comes into play. So that's why it's actually frowned upon in the design world to create logos in Photoshop, because yeah, you might create something great, but when it comes time for the post production of everything and getting things printed, you might find that your logo will start to get a little blurry depending on what you're trying to place it on. If you try to place it on a building or on a sign, you might see that the it might start getting a little pixelated, and that's where Illustrator comes into play. You won't have that issue if you were to create a logo in this software. So that is just a difference between Photoshop and Illustrator. You can do a lot of the same things. You can do a lot of the same things in Photoshop that you can do in Illustrator and vice versa. But the difference between the two softwares isn't what you can do once you get to the point of printing. So I'm going to quickly open a new canvas in Illustrator. Same thing, 10 by 10. Even though in Illustrator's case, whatever dimensions your canvas is doesn't really matter. I just do 10 by 10 by default because that's just what I'm most comfortable creating on to see what I'm doing. But as you can see, there's not really anything new or anything different about the dashboard in Illustrator as opposed to Photoshop. Over to the right side, you still see your same layers panel, and over to the left side, you still see your same toolbar with pretty much the exact same tools. And I use the same tools in Illustrator that I do in Photoshop. So what I'm gonna do, since the dashboard isn't really that different, I'm gonna open up a logo that I recently made, just to show you what direction I usually take when it comes to my logo projects. And I'm just gonna zoom on this just a little bit. So this was actually a church logo that I did recently. I just finished this probably 2 days ago. And at the top, that what you see in green, that is the French, because it's a Haitian church, and they have their French pronunciation of the church's name, and then there's the English translation at the very bottom in gold. So this is just a church in Naples, Florida, and usually logo designing is pretty straightforward, but uh, I always try to go the clever. I always try to do something that's pretty creative and clever, but doesn't. But still not doing too much. So my style, I would describe my style as doing something that you probably wouldn't think to do. You probably wouldn't think to do yourself if you looked at it, but when you see it, you're like, oh, it's so simple, but that was such a great idea. And in this case, they already told me what colors they wanted, the olive green and the gold. And they told me, and because of the fact that I know it's a church, that immediately tells you when it comes to a logo or any logo that you work with, yeah, you have to really get an understanding of what their business is and what they do for a living, and just what market that they find themselves in. That'll let you know what type of imagery you should go for, and you can even ask them, hey, just to be a little bit more, just to have a little bit more clarity, is there any specific imagery that you wanted me to use? But in this case, knowing that it's a church, she let me know that hey, you can use a Bible, you can use mountains, and maybe even a dove, but definitely don't use a. She said definitely do not use a cross, only because that's a little bit too traditional. She wanted something a little bit more unique, and in this case, I went with a Bible. And as you can see over here, I have the outline of a Bible. So on the right side of the Bible, that last, I used that bottom portion that extends upward in this almost right angle. To be the, I used that to be a part of the E, and that's just, and I didn't do too much, but that separated I could have easy way out and just took a Bible and placed it on top of the words. I could have took a Bible and placed it up here and then just did a regular spelling over here, but like I said, I try to go for the very clever and subtle route. So you still get an E over here, but you also get a Bible. And then just so you don't confuse the person that's looking at it, I made the left side of the Bible this gold color over here, just so you can still capture that color scheme as well. So just like that. Um, And at that point, once you get the colors down packed, you find something in your imagery that you can do that's clever, like I did here. At that point, it's just a matter of choosing the right fonts. And the fonts that you choose are dependent. The fonts that you choose are dependent upon just what type of business it is. In this case, she said she just wanted something that was professional but not distracting. So don't use any wild fonts or anything like that. Don't use anything that's cursive or script. So just use something that's really straight to the point and professional and very legible. It would have been imagine if I took the text and I'm going to quickly just change up the font. So right now what I have works, but imagine if I changed it to something like something such as like this. So immediately the design is ruined, just because the font just doesn't match what she's trying to accomplish here. So that is the base. That is really Illustrator. That is the basics of Illustrator and logo designing. As far as and like I said, there's other designers out there that probably use Illustrator for more than I do. I use it for logo specifically, so that's all I'm capable of showing. But the tools and the layers panel and the shapes and the options that you have in Photoshop and Illustrator are pretty much similar at that. And then from there, it just really depends. It really just depends on what type of art that you're interested in doing and what type of designing that you're interested in getting into. In my case, like I said, logos are meant to be done for me in Illustrator, and I like to use Photoshop more so for things that have their set dimensions, such as flyers and invitations and book covers and banners and things of that nature. And other than that, I would say I'm done showing the basics of each software. So I'm open to questions in general, but that does it for the presentation. And if there are no questions, I hope you enjoy it.
Hey, Austin, let me see. Solomon said his mic doesn't work, but he's got a few questions.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see it there in the chat box.
Yeah, I'm reading now. Let me see.
Okay.
Okay, I have a Adobe CD, but it still asks me to pay for something. Is there a way to get it for free? Oh, in the past, that's actually funny you asked that. In the past, and I'm even guilty of this, because I've been using Adobe since about 2014, and I would say from 2014 all the way to 2019-ish, I was finding different ways to get Adobe installed on my laptop for free. But and that's just online, that's just technology. But Adobe in recent years, as of 2020 and on, they've really cracked down on people finding ways to use the software for free. And I was pretty much forced as of 2019, 2020, I was pretty much forced to have to actually pay monthly for Adobe software. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, for the entire Adobe Creative Cloud, I pay about $50 a month, I believe. Yeah, and that's but I don't mind. I make pretty good money off of my creative services, so I don't mind it. But back in it was almost perfect timing for me, because during my college years I probably couldn't have afforded that. So I just got lucky as far as that concerned. But as of now, to answer your question, there is no way to get it for free anymore. But that did used to be the case for years. And how do I proceed to getting clients? As far as I get clients in a variety of ways. I would say the number one source, honestly, is just word of mouth. Sometimes, I have great friends of mine. I have people on social media that have seen my work, and they know people that know people that know people, and so on and so forth. And word just travels. All it takes is someone going into their group chat or posting on social media, hey, I need someone that does logos, or I need someone that can create flyers. I just need a graphic designer in general. And then from there, the people in your network do the work for you sometimes. And they'll say, hey, I got a guy, here's his contact information. And then they'll email you, they'll text you. Speaking on that, I prefer to get email because the busier you get, the less you're gonna want people calling you and texting you. You're gonna want people to. Nowadays, I tell people to only email me. I was okay with being texted at first, but the busier you get, you want to have that. You want to have that paper trail, and you want to have people email you so you can take note of certain things and just hold people accountable. So in order to do that, you want to make people email you. Like, say, what would happen if you need to provide some sort of proof or an update to a client, and you drop your phone one day and it breaks? Then, well, what existed in your text thread no longer exists, but your email never disappears. You can come to Miami-Dade College Library and open up your email, and then you can go on from there. But uh, text messaging, I try to stay away from that when it comes to working with clients, just because it's just a lot of information and a lot of back and forth, and I'd rather do that in an email thread as opposed to texting. And outside of word of mouth, I just get my clients by I consistently post my work. I always I'm always posting like, hey, this is a logo that I recently did for X, Y, and Z company or anything like that. And you know, I've had I've had the I started off doing logos for good friends of mine and people around me and in my immediate network. And then I've been lucky enough to do projects. As I moved up and up the ranks and proven myself, I've been lucky enough to do it for politicians and city governments and things like that. So I've been very, very lucky. But you have to you have to put yourself out there. You have to put your work out there. You have to be okay with the fact that you have to also be okay with the fact that someone might not even like what you post online. You have to have that confidence in your work. You have to have that confidence in your work that, hey, when I post this, a few people might not like it, but the majority will like it, and the majority of these people will refer me to people around me. And then, if you stay consistent with that, then and if you stay consistent with that, then you'll find yourself. If you stay consistent with that, then you'll find yourself in situations where you'll find your name gets brought up in rooms that you probably wouldn't think was possible before. And yeah, that's normally how go about getting clients. Just word of mouth and me just getting myself out there on social media and making sure that people always have eyeballs on my work. And do I suggest a portfolio? I would say, speaking on that, if you would like to get clients but you don't currently have a portfolio, to answer the question in general, yes, you should always have a portfolio. I can't remember the last time I've talked with a potential client before booking them. I can't remember the last time I talked to a potential client and they didn't ask me for samples or for previews of what I've done in the past. They're gonna always ask you that. So you should definitely have a portfolio. And if you don't have one, that's okay. We all start somewhere. I would say that to to combat that, what I did in the very beginning to have a portfolio, what I did in the very beginning to have a portfolio, I did a lot of free work. Anytime someone said that they were looking for someone to do X, Y, and Z type of work, just because I knew I had no real portfolio, I always offered to do things for free, just so I can at least have something to show a potential client that I would want to get paid for. So, but I absolutely do suggest a portfolio. It would really be hard to get booked for anything if you don't have anything to show for it, or if you don't have proof that you're good at what you do. So, yeah, do free work in the beginning, just maybe 10 to 20 projects. The first 10 to 20 projects should probably be for free, and then at that point you have a very nice portfolio to show anyone potential. And make sure in that 10 to 20 you have a variety of things. So four of those should probably be logos, five of those should probably be flyers, and two of those may be invitations, maybe one book cover. Try to diversify just so you're prepared for whatever comes at you. So I think that does it for every question. And there's a quick survey that everyone would need to fill out. Here's the link to fill that survey out, and it's pretty easy to remember. It's just tinyurl.com/summer success survey. And again, that's tinyurl.com/summer success survey. And that is the conclusion of the presentation.